Believe it or not, there's actually a difference between paying homage to inspiring source material and being horribly lazy. The creator of this film, however, doesn't seem to understand that difference. If you had to make a horror film out of genre tropes from the last 40 odd years or so, and you ended up with a movie devoid of plot, character, originality, substance, humanity, or justification for its own existence, then your name is most likely Damien Leon, and you're credited with birthing the cinematic death rattle that is All Hallows Eve. Hallows is technically Leon's writing and directorial debut, and it really shows. It's almost impressive in its ability to appropriate so many aspects of better-made movies while still managing to completely desecrate the original intent at the same time.
Hey, look what I got.
The only function these borrowed elements seem to serve in this film is a way for the non-existent plot to hobble towards the ultimate end of the movie just so it can put itself out of its own misery.
This isn't funny. Who is this?
Though it's set in a modern time period, the movie opens with a throwback 80s synth track that calls to mind the intro of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch and similar horror titles of the era. Now we're introduced to our central character, token babysitter woman, who's tasked with looking after two child actors on Halloween night, hence the title of the film. All seems fairly standard and cliched as far as horror movie setups go, until the babysitter finds a mysterious VHS tape in one of the kids' candy bags. The tape contains 3 sub-stories that are connected to the central frame narrative of the sitter and the kids. And for some reason, this all seems really familiar. Strangely, the stories on the tape aren't even found footage, they're just movies. The reason VHS was actually used in the movie VHS was because it lent a raw and disturbingly antiquated feel to the footage, which was creatively designed around a single camera perspective. If you're not going to imitate the style or structure of it, then there might as well not be a VHS tape in the movie. Anyway, the 3 stories form an anthology that are kind of, but not really connected to each other. Each story previously existed as its own standalone short film before being compiled into All Hallows Eve. The first story, originally titled The Ninth Circle, and the third, called Terrifier, were released in 2008 and 2011 respectively. I'm not sure about the second story, but based on how cheap it feels in comparison to the other stories, which are in their own right pretty cheap, I think it was just used to pad out the runtime for the whole feature. But anyway. The babysitter pops in the VHS, and we're treated to our first short film in the movie. The first story follows the exploits of a generic female horror movie victim as she is abducted from a train station and forced to participate in a satanic ritual with some of the worst looking movie demons I've seen in quite some time. It's a blurred combination of creature feature, abduction movie, and satanic nonsense that looks more like something the Mystery Science Theater guys would be more at home discussing than me. Oh, and get used to seeing that clown, by the way. He's the main antagonist of the movie. To its credit, he is the most visually striking thing in the movie, and in certain scenes comes off as genuinely creepy. The movie seems to have been created just for the clown character to be displayed, but is so poorly done and at times masturbatory, completely defangs any real scares we could be getting out of him. It's a sad waste of a potentially really creepy character. The monochrome clown physically appears in every story but the second, and unfortunately his only goal throughout the film seems to just be evil. It's never really explained what his deal is, nor is his origin even hinted at. He's just a creepy clown who just happens to be there to do creepy things. Without any kind of actual motive behind his actions, I found it incredibly hard to give a shit about anything he actually does. Freddy Krueger needed to feed on children's fear to survive. Jason Voorhees was at the command of his deceased mother to do her bidding. Michael Myers was under dark magic to kill his family members, etc. They all have their own individual motives, as campy as they can be, but we don't know anything about this clown guy, and in another, more thought-out movie, leaving him mysterious like that might actually be a good thing. But here it feels like it was just done out of sheer incompetence, and it lacks any kind of foresight for the plot to have any kind of resolution. The second story is about another woman getting chased around her house by an alien that looks like he got his costume from Walmart. This is probably the least obnoxious story out of all. Forget I said that. Get used to that noise. This story sort of reminds me of old 1950s B-movies and even older Twilight Zone episodes, but it's so awkward and cheap looking that it's almost laughable. I mean, just look at the alien. It's wearing a cheap alien mask of the most stereotypical alien ever made on its face. Why? Surely the prop department could have been that hard up for cash. Plastic alien Scuba Man succeeds in capturing the woman for some reason, but not before she knocks over a painting in her house from earlier, revealing a picture of the Clown Man himself. This feels like the laziest and cheapest connection ever. Does this mean that the clown is working with both demons and extraterrestrials who apparently get their space gear from the dollar store? Is the clown an alien himself? Was all this orchestrated somehow for a great plan that will have a payoff in the end? Well, fuck you and your questions, says Damien Leon. He's running the show here, and he says that the more ambiguous and silly unexplained things he can throw into this picture, the better. It's like someone gave him that old line that what we fear the most is the unknown, but he didn't really get it, so he just thinks it's an excuse to not explain things, and that makes good storytelling. But as you can see, it doesn't. Without a doubt, the third story is the most frustrating out of all of them. This story actually focuses on the clown himself, but it brings up more questions than answers, and just left me scratching my head due to the sheer asinine and ridiculousness of all of it. Basically, a woman is taking a long road trip when she gets lost and stops at a convenience station in the middle of nowhere to get gas and directions. Again, not very original. Soon the clown shows up, and after murdering the gas station attendant, who I should mention was mad at the clown because...
Think you just piss all over the place and smear your shit on the walls?
Yeah, we're obviously dealing with a very complex and intelligent villain here. Be very afraid. Next, Road Trip Woman becomes his target, which is bad news for her because at this point the movie reveals to us that the clown can apparently teleport and alter reality at will. And if you've seen the other two endings of the other two short films, you know how this is going to go, which makes this immediately contrived and pointless. After wrecking her car, the woman is able to flag down a ride from a man who, for some reason, is the only other living soul out on the road that night. This poor guy lives just long enough to see the teleporting god clown catch up with them in a car for some reason, even though he's demonstrated that he doesn't need whatever. And then he shoots him in the head with a gun. Why? Demon god clown that can transport anywhere with vast magical powers, why would you use a gun? I don't know. In the end, after being stabbed and healing like Wolverine, so you can add that to his growing powers list, the clown captures the poor girl and finally enacts his evil master plan of surgically removing her arms, legs, and boobs. Nice, Damien. It's like he didn't know how to end it, but really, really wanted to make it some kind of statement at the end that I guess he thought was dark or edgy, but it falls completely flat on its face. It's so ridiculous and dare I say pretentious, even though I think it's a disservice to use that word here, you can't take it seriously. We then go back to the main storyline, which concludes with the clown entering the house via the influence of the magical tape and brutally killing the two children. The director tried doing what he did with the ending of the third story, and it fails just as hard, if not harder. This isn't dark or brooding storytelling, it's just childish and ham-handed. Also, I'm not sure where their bodies went, but whatever. According to IMDb, and as I've mentioned before, All Hallows Eve is the only writing and directorial work Leon has ever done to date. Before this, he was primarily working as a special effects and makeup artist, and to his credit, a lot of the gore effects look pretty solid in this movie. In a way, this kind of reminds me of when I was a kid and I would try making movies by copying things I'd seen done in other movies at the time that I liked. But when you're an adult and you've worked in the movie industry before and seen how movies are made, it's inexcusable at this point to rip off so many things and do it so lazily and explicitly. While some of the images in this movie are actually decently creepy and will probably stick with you long after you see it, beyond that, it's really hard to recommend this movie to anyone other than die-hard horror fans, and even that's a stretch. A failed love letter to the horror movie genre, or lazy ego-stroking that satisfies nothing. For the brave souls willing to sit through it, you can be the judge of that, but as for me, I give this movie half of an interdimensional clown god out of 5.